I invite the experts to take the stage. Professor Igor Kanižaj from Zagreb University, Croatia. Tim Bepsit from Porticus, Belgium. Mimi van Doen from Mediawejzer, Netherlands. Mr. Paolo Cesarini from European Commission. And Sally Reynolds from Media&Learning Association, ATiT, Belgium.
Working? Okay? Can you hear me? Yes, now you can hear me. Hasn't this been a simply wonderful conference for all of us? Making new friends, meeting new people, and we're running a little bit late, as you've probably noticed, but it's because of the wealth and the wonderful stories we've been hearing all morning. So I think even though we're running a little bit late, we still wanted to make sure we had a little bit of time to have some follow-ups, some feedback, some reactions from people, and hopefully from you as well, to this wonderful conference and this wonderful experience we've been having for the last 2 days. Sorry, I'm a little breathless. We took a bit of time to get this going at the back. So you've been introduced to our panelists here this morning, and they have very kindly offered to give us some feedback, what they take away, what are the main ideas that they'll go home to their families with this weekend from this conference and tell them. So I'm going to start, if I may, with Tim at the end. Tim, this is an experience that you know. You were so responsible for the last event, for the first Evans event that took place in Warsaw, that was such a great start for this community to get together. How do you feel about this conference? What do you take away?
I feel very happy. Being here, seeing what it does, bringing all these people together from this sector. And I'm more and more, and even more convinced that events like these are absolutely crucial. Crucial because they help us to get rid of barriers, different kind of barriers, between regions in Europe, between countries, between professional sectors. Between ideas and strategies for the future. So the way that people, the positivity and the constructivism that people bring to this room is absolutely heartwarming, and I feel that media literacy is on the rise and will play a very important role the next years. I also see that there is a great diversity still in media literacy projects. But that also somehow there is a common narrative arising that probably has to do with worldwide political circumstances. And I think that political crisis is good for media literacy in a way, because if you see the great projects from Italy, for instance, for the rise of media literacy here in Eastern and Central Europe, might have something to do with awkward political circumstances. So just a thought. Another thing is that I learned about new concepts here that I want to dig deeper into. The affective feedback loops that we learned about yesterday, giving an opinion online, waiting for likes, being affirmed in it, reformulating that same position over and over again. So also ultimately making sure that you end up in a bubble, in a tunnel. So this is something that I found intuitively right, but I want to learn more about it. Also, I learned about these meta concepts. Some of them were really funny, like fake fact checkers are apparently spotted in certain countries. And then René just talked about the hoax of the hoax. So these are funny thoughts to me. And the last thing I want to share is that there is a dominance now in thinking about fake news, propaganda, what this conference was all about. And there's two complementary visions on that. One, I found, one is rather ideological. There is one truth. We should bring that truth. It's more the journalistic point of view. And then there's a pragmatical point of view. There is a truth, but we see that this truth is stretched so many times. It's becoming something fluid, and we see that certain groups within society are manipulating and tweaking the truth and setting the scene for certain sentiments that are often not the right ones, and they are considering that maybe it's time to start experimenting with using the same methods that propaganda is using to develop counter-narratives. And before this conference, I was rather sure of where I'd stand in that debate, but now this conference made me rethink the whole thing. And this is something that I will chew on for sure the upcoming months. So I think that was it that I wanted to share.
Thank you very much. We're also, hopefully, we'll have a few minutes to get some audience reaction to some of the things that our panelists are going to say. So we have microphones in the audience, don't worry. But I'd like to move on to Mimi, if I may, in terms of what do you take away from this conference, Mimi?
Is it working? Hello? Yeah. One of the things of being a big network organization in the Netherlands is, of course, understanding the power of a network. And we can't achieve things if we don't work together. And that is one thing that I really take with me from this whole, all the parties that's been here have been so inspirational, and the connections that we can make. I see a lot of opportunities in that. We have the Week of Media Literacy coming up in the Netherlands. The topic this year is about generation media and together become media literate. So to engage and start a conversation between these groups, between teachers, parents, teenagers and media makers. I personally found a lot of inspiration in the projects that's been focusing especially on teenagers and youngsters, because you see in the Netherlands that the primary schools, more than 7,000 of them will join the Week of Media Literacy, and that number is only rising. But the high schools are really difficult. And I believe that giving the youngsters the power to tell their stories and in creative ways and to be able to reflect upon them, we generate a new generation, that there will be so much opportunity in that. And the projects that I've been seeing and people that have been talking, I think have opened up my eyes to start new things in the Netherlands as well. Yeah. I think that.
And there have been so many opportunities for collaboration, I think. You know, we've heard from Factabari today.
Definitely.
Let's do something together about the European elections. You know, Tena's project about refugees. Let's see what happens to them after they leave this part of the world and they move to Western Europe. So I think that's what the conference has been all about in that respect, I think, too, hasn't it? Paolo, we come to you next because, of course, people look to the European Commission, and unfortunately you're the person who represents the European Commission for us here. Not unfortunately, of course, at all. But we do look for support. We look for recognition for this community. And we look more, of course, more and more for funding. So I don't want to ask you specifically about funding, but can you tell us what you take away from this?
Yes. Does it work? Yeah. First of all, I take away good feeling, because I have the impression that it's a community that it is funding a new purpose, a new direction, and a new mission, which is important and should be supported. Fake news, propaganda, misinformation, stereotyping as well. I think the awareness about the dangers that these phenomena represent for democracy is very much on the top of the awareness of this community, but as well on the side of policymakers. I think it's important to strengthen the work that the media literacy community can do, bearing in mind that it has a crucial role to play, but also it is facing some challenges. And my takeaway is mainly focused on these challenges. I think the first is how to better adjust the instruments for media literacy to a changing news media landscape, which is dominated by social media, and many reflections have been made in this respect. We have been organizing a World Cafe session. We have been harvesting ideas. I think that they require some time for us to reflect, but I think there are good points that deserve further reflection. The second one, I think, is that we need to sharpen the multidisciplinary approach, which is built into the media literacy community, and to give, I think, very much attention to the contributions that psychology, psychometrics, neuroscience can bring to us, because it is not only a question to contrast lies with facts, it's also a question to make people engaged in facts, and that's the role of emotions, affects, and the very interesting, I think, perspective that have been opened by Megan Boyler and also from Anne Stern, I think should be taken into account. The third challenge is about how to develop new strategies for promoting a responsible communication, There are new tools that certainly are interesting, should be further developed. I think the Propaganda Lab and the contribution by René Hobbs and you, Igor, with these annotated videos are interesting and deserves to be, I think, to be brought forward. We have also another experience, I think, that has been witnesses here with fact-checking organizations, NGOs, and professional journalism working in this field. What is striking is that those organizations are very much entrenched into national realities, and it's correct that it's like that, because misleading narratives have to appeal, first of all, to an audience that is very much influenced by themes, topics that are not necessarily the same across country, although the strategy may have a wider reach. So it is important to build a cross-border, I think, cross-border cooperations between these organizations, because there are synergies that can improve, to be gained, and more impact that can be produced by pooling together their experience across countries. And another point that is, I think, is important, it is to develop new approaches. I think new approaches, I heard this morning an interesting presentation about the use of network analysis for developing a sort of a network intelligence to have a kind of preemptive fact-checking, not ex post but ex ante, to detect how the narratives are actually emerging and influence people. So this approach about network analysis that has been explained by Manuela Caiani this morning, I think deserves further reflection. I don't want to be too long, but I think there are also other points that everybody should keep in mind that concerns the role of social media. Much has been said about algorithm. I think the work about transparency and accountability of algorithm, it's a line of reflection that is important to keep in mind, and about data. Well, everybody or many people have been following with a lot of interest the presentation by Morozov.
Yeah.
And the question about who controls the data and what is, in fact, the role of data, not only in shaping the opinions of people, but also how they influence the identity of people in a public sphere which is online, which it is a parallel sphere to the physical world. And that links very much with the reflection about your citizenship. So the role of media literacy then becomes a role to develop a civic responsibility in the public online spheres for all users. But that requires a more awareness and more control of the data that people give to social platforms, and that constitute their own profiles. A final word, really a final word. I think we have a shared responsibility here. I think that platforms, news organizations, professional journalism, and NGOs and policymakers have a shared responsibility to address this issue. We need to work out, therefore, a shared vision about what we want to do, basing ourselves on certain principles that are shared principles. My conclusive word is, I think, would be just thinking about principles. I think the worst that we should do, that we could do, is to tell people what they should not read. We should, or see, or watch. I think we should rather work out solutions where people are free to decide what they want to read, see, and watch.
It's about giving the personal responsibility, indeed. Thank you very much. Thank you. Igor.
Yes, firstly, I would like to thank you all for bringing media literacy expertise to Sarajevo. In this week, I think you all made the conference, not just we who are participating in panels, discussions, and preparing materials for you. So I would like to thank you indeed. And I had a fantastic time. We started with Propaganda Lab with René. It was so challenging to have 50 participants from 14 different countries, journalists, NGOs, scientists, researchers. We were challenging the new agenda, how to teach propaganda, and from reactions we had, I think that we are on the right road, and I think that we'll have many new projects coming from this. However, I would like to focus on two quotes. The first one was from Aidan White. I think he left already. Taking ourselves out of the box and putting ourselves together. That is what we are supposed to do, and I think this is something we all must have in mind when we will be leaving this conference and traveling to our homes. And the second one, maybe we have a momentum, what Jordi said, that politicians are feeling threatened for the first time in the history because of all these scandals that we were discussing. But I wouldn't like this to become the reason why are we all doing media literacy programs. I think the idea is to empower them as well, because we see so many things happening because of the lack of knowledge, even from those that are supposed to promote the knowledge as the first ones. And finally, we did several reports in the last years. The last one is from the Council of Europe on the mapping media literacy practices. And we saw that one of the conclusions is that the civil society organizations are having the lead position here, reacting immediately while our curricula takes time to have some adjustments and changes, while we can't react on all challenges we have. I think that civil society organizations are really the ones that should maybe also offer some new initiatives, and we should definitely support their work. We need to have journalists as partners. Aidan was also talking about it several times. But I think this is a joint project for us all together to promote diversity of our approaches, but to share the responsibility, just like Paolo said, but also to give our best to all these practices that we have been witnessing in this week. And for that reason, I thank you all once again, especially to Evans and Joanna, and I would like to applaud them for a great organization.
You've stolen my thunder, Igor. we have a few moments. If anybody has any final thoughts they'd like to share, and we do have microphones in the room. Any thoughts? Jordi.
Hi, thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, congratulations and such an inspiring couple of days of conversation. A couple of things. I would like to add a conspiracy theory of what René was saying. And one conspiracy theory that was very much relevant, especially during the 90s and early 2000s, is that the government, the power, them, don't want media literacy in the schools because that way they can manipulate the people, they can manipulate us much easier. So what I would like to is actually to debunk this conspiracy theory by replying to one of the questions that Alton was putting on his slide at the end. Why there is not media and information literacy in the curriculum in the schools? Why there is not media and information literacy in the pedagogical, in the educational? All the future educators, all the educators should be learning these issues and putting that. So why are not doing it? What's happening? People like me, René, many of yours, has been in this field for many, many years. It's growing, it's great. I see so many inspiring, but it's all happening like outside. They were lucky inside for a couple of moments. Anyway, so thank you again. And just why, and let's debunk this conspiracy theory that they don't want us to do
that. I have to tell you that in fact was to be our debate discussion. We did give you papers because we were going to debate whether we should have it in the curriculum or not. So unfortunately we don't have time to do that. But you have all been given a red paper and a green paper. And I think if you have enjoyed this conference, I would like you to raise the green paper. If you have not enjoyed it, raise the red one. So what have you got? Did you enjoy it? I think we did. Thank you very much. And thank you to our panelists for their very short interactions. Back to Nedja.